What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. I'm Ronan Gaine. Joining me, as always, Chris Nambu. Thank you so much for making this your first podcast for NBA coverage. Remember, we are everywhere on social media at Coast to Coast NBA, so make sure you follow, subscribe, let us know what you guys think. On today's show, we are going to be talking about the big news coming out of New York. Tom Thibodeau has been fired after the most successful year, arguably, in since 2000, they decided to part ways with their coach, apparently in the pursuit of the sole goal of winning a championship. That's the word from New York. But we'll be talking that. We'll be talking the Timberwolves' exit from the playoffs. What's next for them? Will Randall return to Minnesota? And of course, we'll be previewing the NBA Finals, which start tomorrow. OKC versus the Indiana Pacers. Who would have seen this coming at the start of the year? Not us, that's for sure. But Chris, before we get into it, how you doing, man?
I'm good, and I'm going to disagree with you right off the bat. We called OKC. I called OKC at least
Okay, we got
since the
OKC.
beginning. We
I'm
got
the
no one got
Pacers
the other
maybe.
side right. Other side, but man, I'm doing good. Summer is in full bloom here in New England. Weather is great. Finals are approaching, and I'm sorry, my friend, we do not see the Knicks there, but we have a shared trauma now. We've had shared trauma of near success with Tibbs and the ups and downs of that. What I will say, your roller coaster is over. Now you can just enjoy the finals without the existential dread of the end of it. But dude, Tibbs, let's just get into how good the Knicks have been with him here. Like he's truly turned around this franchise, a franchise that hadn't sniffed any real playoff hopes until he got there. And I think there's been a lot of criticisms of him, like obvious ones that we don't have to get into. His obviously his style, his demeanor. Is he really a player's coach? Does he play these guys too many minutes? Bridges, the guy who is the Iron Man of the league, saying that he plays him too much, works him too hard. I think we got to look back at Tibbs for the bulk of his work and have to say that his era in New York has been a great one. Like it's undeniable that before that, I mean, should we just list out the number of coaches that you went through? It's been way better than they could have expected, and I think that for all the bad things we can get through, I don't think that he deserved to be fired amidst what happened here. At least that's my initial feeling on it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I will say the best point I think I've seen on this, I can't even remember where I saw it. I don't even know if it was anywhere official. It might have just been another creator on social media that I saw made this point. It's I get this vibes that the Knicks wanted to fire Tibbs after the regular season, after what happened with all the losses against the best teams in the league. I don't think
Yeah.
anyone in New York was expecting the deep playoff run they went on. They ultimately did it, and maybe that should have saved them. But I think that's a good point. I think the Knicks wanted to they made this decision before the playoffs started, and they weren't going to let any sort of any success short of somehow winning a title change that.
I guess it's an interesting situation where that I think maybe teams like the Grizzlies want to avoid, right? Like we wanted you gone anyways, so instead of making this a debacle, like it's going, maybe it isn't right now. Now that it's actually happened, Tibbs is fired. Like, is anyone going to talk about this next week? Honestly, probably not. So like when now that I'm like looking back and thinking about the firings at the end of the season, thinking about like what kind of noise they were avoiding if they somehow had good runs. Like the Knicks had a great run.
Yeah.
They were 2 games away from the finals. It's been decades since they could say that. And we're probably not going to care about this next week, and then we'll be happy to talk about who the next guy is. And that's just how toxic coaching in the NBA is. Um, but I feel like I do want to go through some of these things, like reasons that people bring up to fire him. One, the bench doesn't utilize the bench enough, doesn't go deep enough, doesn't work with his rotations. So let me ask you, you know this Knicks roster very well. You watch a lot of these games. Where was he supposed to go? How much deeper is he supposed to go? I think it's more of a question of the depth of talent that this team had, as opposed to Tibbs not getting creative enough with his rosters. I don't think there was much to work with beyond the 7, 8 guys they had. Like look beyond campaign. Where do they go from there?
Mm. It's yeah. I mean, It's tough because obviously you make the comments, obviously he plays guys too much, but then you're also like, look at the bench he's got to deal with. There really isn't a whole lot there. It's kind of more the smaller margins you have to look at. Like there was a point during the regular season, I can't remember if it was when Brunson was hurt or around what period it was, but Landry Shamet really started to come in and have a big impact and was really starting to hit some threes. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden he was just gone. Precious Achua during the regular season was having such a solid impact. Like not anything crazy, but play him 10, 15 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Absolutely impact player. Playoffs come, he's gone. Deuce McBride, arguably our best bench player outside of Robinson, got absolutely no real run alongside the other starters, which I think is an area that he should have experienced experiment with it more. That it's just those little small things that he didn't do and never really even considered doing until it was too late. Those are kind of the areas where you look a little bit deeper, and as much as you want to say they don't have the talent of obviously like an Indiana or like an OKC, there's also an unwillingness to even consider it or even try it, even in the small samples that these guys showed where they could do their thing.
Yeah. Such a contrast that we saw between these two teams throughout that series is that, guys like Deuce, maybe he has a game where he gets a little more run, and it's unexpected. And he is a guy that I'm impressed every time he gets those extra minutes because he always makes the most of it. And in a system like Indiana where everyone's getting so many shots, the ball is moving so much more, and everyone feels a little bit more confident. And I feel like that's why, I mean, we'll get into it, why they've had such great success across their depth because of how much ball movement they have. And I guess, that's a question in terms of personnel and coaching, and there's a blend of that and pairing the right talent with the right coaching. But I will say like how much of that is on Tibbs and him emphasizing a more ball movement, more motion, more cutting, more sharing of the ball. How much is that Tibbs? How much of that is got a guy like Brunson to come to New York to be an ISO heavy guard? I don't know. I mean, I think it's fair to think about both. Like maybe there is a better coaching system that incorporates Jalen Brunson's like immaculate talent to create mismatches and create buckets by himself. But there's also so many times where the Knicks got stagnant and it's questionable like how are these other guys, especially these bench units when Brunson's out there with the rotation guys, how are they going to get touches if he's just mostly trying to get to his bag? Um, so that's an interesting question as we approach like who would be the replacement? Who's going to be able to blend all this talent together in the right piece? Because I think the talent is undeniable, and the Knicks have one of the most talented rosters in the league, but they had a negative net rating with their starting five. And it does not make sense. A team that were 2 games from the finals, you say they don't have great depth, had a net negative rate. Like, how did they manage this? I think they're so good, but so not well organized and put together that I think at the end of the day, it is fair to think about could someone else have made this into something more special, like it should be?
Yeah, I think there's just I think you watch that finals and obviously he did get out coached, but there was also times against in that Celtics series where he also showed his greatness as a coach, making adjustments to put them in a position to make the big comebacks and beat the Boston Celtics. But yeah, I think obviously that Eastern Conference Finals he did get out coached, and just watching that series it felt like his voice was getting a little bit stagnant just by watching how poorly the Knicks played defensively. How often the Pacers got open looks and transition plays off made buckets by the Knicks and going up against set defenses. Like you cannot tell me that Thibodeau wasn't seeing this on the film after every game and during every game, and all the players weren't realizing it as well. And it still just kept happening and happening and happening. Like the Knicks in those finals played one game and one fourth quarter of defense. Outside of that, they really didn't play any defense at all. But that doesn't change the fact that this is a very important moment for the New York Knicks. This could be the start of something new, but this could also be the beginning of the end because the grass is not always greener. The Knicks unequivocally have got to get this coaching decision right. This new next hire has to be the right has to be absolutely the right guy.
Yeah. And I feel like there will be a lot of things going their way as well. This is not some like stagnant team. that has been together forever, and it's like I don't know if this is working. This is a new team. Like this is really their first season all together, first postseason all healthy as well,
Mhm.
and having the opportunity to to go through that and to have competed the way they did in these playoffs, like the amount of experience that they just gathered from this run, like can't be understated. Like how much like the they grow together, how much they can communicate better with each other, how much they, know each other's weaknesses, know each other's strengths, especially when it comes down to those final moments. Like that is probably going to be the biggest benefit to them compared to like any coaching change they have because these guys are so talented that I think that just them better knowing how to play with each other is going to be huge. And I think that they'll continue to improve. I can't see them getting worse than this. I just can't. I can't. I think they're too good. I think they have too much talent. I think they have too much serious veteran leadership on this team. I doesn't matter. I think they don't want to get a guy if the big issues were, offensive creativity, and especially getting the most out of Cat and Brunson. Um, and maybe a little bit of like lineup creativity because finding ways to avoid the defensive mismatches that just were rampant. How can they correct for that? And who are some guys that we're thinking of? There's some names out there, and maybe it's a little too early to say, but there's a lot of coaches on the market right now, and you got to think as a fan, there's a lot of guys you might be interested in. Anyone that you like?
I mean, in my heart, I like the idea of Taylor Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy that I really like. I've always enjoyed his coaching. Like these last few years, I've really thought of him as one of the bright young minds in the NBA. But then at the same time, you're kind of looking at it, what happened to him in Memphis, and like what did he actually achieve in Memphis? As much as there was trouble, he only ever got them to a one conference semifinal.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like the pros and cons of that. Like he's the guy that in my heart kind of says he could be the guy. He's the guy that we've seen get the most out of role players. He's the guy who's been able to develop teams and play creative offensive and defensive units. So that side of it, I definitely like the idea of Taylor Jenkins. Then again, I'm also looking at the last couple of years. It feels like everywhere that's had like a big impact or a real positive impact is on a winning track is like first time hires. I feel like that's been like such a common thing over the last couple of
Mm-hmm.
years. And that's an area where I think a lot of people are like, I don't think the Knicks are going to go there because they're really zoned in on just winning the championship. They're going to go for experience. But Johnny Bryant is the guy that was the associate head coach or assistant for the Knicks. He went over to the Cavs. He's now a finalist for the Suns job. So people are thinking the Knicks pulled the plug on Tibbs so they could maybe pursue him as well. Obviously, it's tough to know how what ideas assistants are going to come in with when they haven't coached before. You don't fully know what their area of expertise is. But this is a guy that's known to the Knicks and that they really like, so he could be another option that they might be exploring if they are willing to go for a first timer.
Yeah, that is interesting. I've heard that name, and I don't know him well in terms of his coaching. But I'm excited about Jenkins. If you think about it, the kind of guy that you want in New York that's going to be very different compared to what you saw with Tibbs. If your biggest complaint with Tibbs is, hey, he doesn't play these other guys, doesn't give other guys run, these energy young guys that we want to see more of, why aren't you playing them? Why are you playing these guys? You're going to get that out of a guy like Jenkins. I think that's the biggest thing that New York fans want to see is they want to see a lot of these young guys get run and how many of them, your Quickleys, your McBrides that you've seen not get as much run as you'd want to. And I think you want to get a guy that's going to also develop the bench, develop the young players. Because I don't know, where does Achua go? I think that's a really good point though, because like there were moments you got like teams like the Pacers. I think it's such a good example to look at them. Look at the Thunder, the two teams that are in the finals. They were able to plug guys in who knew their role, that were confident that, when they got plugged in, they were going to get shots. They're going to do their thing. And guys like Achua, they don't have that. And I hats off to guys like McBride for adapting throughout variable minutes throughout the season, but it must be tough to deal with that. So a guy like Jenkins, whoever's going to be coming in, you'd hope that they would solve that issue because I do think that's a really fair change that should be made.
Yeah, yeah, and then, like it's obviously an exciting time, and you look And it is tough. There was that idea in my mind that that continuity would be great to have the same roster, the same coach, all in place going in for the second year. Like this, like you said before, this is the first year of this was all together. The Knicks made huge roster moves last year. Only had 1 year of it to kind of gel and mold. They made it to the conference final, so it would have been great to go and see this a year two of this and see if there was continuity, see if they could grow. But I'm also like, I just think Tibbs has been there long enough. I feel like Tibbs had reached the ceiling with this team. Tibbs is a
Yeah.
great regular season coach. Tibbs is a guy who can get you back like this. Anything the Knicks achieve from here on out, Tibbs will be a part of. Tibbs brought the Knicks back from the brink. He made them contenders again. He made them fun to watch again. But I do believe there is another coach out there that can help this team reach their ultimate ceiling. And then we'll see. We'll see with this next coach hire how big of a liability Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson are defensively. Because with Brunson, we didn't really see it in the first two series. There was actually good moments of him defensively in the first two series, but then against the Pacers, he got absolutely destroyed for large periods of that series. Similar to Cat, can the next coach that comes in somehow convince Cat to stop being an idiot and making stupid fouls?
That's just part of his game at this
Because
point. Can we put that to bed?
that's just the worst thing in the world. Because like every time, like pretty much every game, he has like 4 or 5 fouls, and at the very least, three of them are so avoidable. It's just mind-boggling. Like I couldn't imagine. Like I have to imagine Thibodeau wanted to punch Cat on numerous occasions
But
throughout the
I think
season.
my favorite thing about the ESPN feed, the whole entire series, was every time Cat had a foul, the broadcast immediately panned to Thibodeau. Immediately. Like it was so like they knew exactly what kind of content they're trying to get. And I feel like Tibbs like eventually kind of noticed that like he was just on TV every time because he went from just like freaking out to then just like under his breath, like stupid. He would just be saying it. But
Because
every time.
that's the
But
problem.
that's
That's what it
everyone's
always is.
reaction. That's
It's
everyone's
always
reaction.
stupid. It's never like he's challenging someone at the rim to block a shot or anything. No. It's like off the ball. He's just like getting in a fight with someone, or it's an offensive foul or something so incredibly avoidable. But yeah, we're gonna
That's
see.
never, we got to accept that. Can we put that to
Yeah,
bed?
it's the
It's
way it
been
goes.
years.
It is the way it goes. And then like obviously can they we need Brunson. We need that 1 2 man punch. Like they were a great pick and roll duo throughout the regular season. We basically saw none of that in the playoffs. Didn't really see any 2 man game from Cat and Brunson throughout consistently throughout the playoffs, and that's a big problem. They need to see that, and they got to roll in on the offense. The Knicks have got to be the best offense in basketball if they're going to achieve the most they can. Like they obviously have to be better defensively, but they have to be like unequivocally the best offense because that's the way they've built this. They've built this roster, and that's going to be the pressure on the next guy to come in and do that. And like the last point I'll make is I think the Knicks are going to be in the position where they might have like 5.7 million of like the mid-level exception, and maybe they need to try and convince a veteran to come in and play for them for a year under that, and maybe the firing of Tibbs might make that a little bit more reasonable because obviously Tibbs has always been a guy that the players don't want to play under, and they're maybe hoping that they can convince a guy to come in, a bench guy. Like the Knicks have very little flexibility with money and things like that, but
Yeah.
maybe if they can convince a veteran guy to come in and be like the sixth man for play for a year for like 5 million or something like that. Maybe that's an area they might be able to get to now with Tibbs out the door. But like I don't think that was a major reason why they would have why they made the decision to fire him.
Yeah. I'd say that at times the Jalen Brunson cat pick and roll during the regular season was one of the best in the league. Um, at like halfway through the season, they're scoring 1.69 points per possession. That was in February. But that kind of trailed off a little bit. It felt like there's the
I don't know how much the injury had the impact on that. To be fair, I don't know like the
yeah.
just it kind of once that injury happened, it never really came back. Yeah.
I want to say that it felt like it wasn't like this unstoppable force. Like it didn't feel like that
Mhm.
seamless Jokic Murray two-man game where they just perfectly played off one another. A lot of times I felt like it was just kind of like fading off into to
You
pick
needed
and
to beat
pops.
them.
It was mostly just to get Jalen Brunson onto a mismatch or Cat into a mismatch. And it did feel like a lot of times that the offense was just kind of dictated by just like hunting mismatches, getting Cat into the post. And I was like, Cat had a fantastic postseason. And my question for both of them and really this whole team is like, is there anything that you saw like during this postseason that kind of changed your perception of that player in a way? Because at least for me, like for Cat, like I know what I know about him. I know the foul trouble's there. I know there's not like great defensive talent there, and he's going to be a liability at times when you're putting him in drop. But watching him be relentless, be that first option at times when Brunson wasn't there, and just basically having like 5, 6 possessions in a row where it's like, here's the ball, attack the paint, create offense. That was that reminded me who this guy can be, and it really made me think about like how much of a force he could be in this league, and especially in a playoff situation.
Yeah, for sure. Like his willingness to attack the paint, his willingness to put the ball on the floor, that was definitely a good sign because that's something that's always been labeled against Cat. He settles a little bit too much for a guy with his size and for a guy with his ability to handle the ball and work in the post at his size. He needs to do it more, and we really saw that throughout this playoff series, especially in the finals. Obviously, it didn't ultimately get us to win in that series, but it was definitely still a good sign. Like, and I can't lie, like this playoffs, the finals was the first time I've ever really doubted Jalen Brunson. This is his first, like this is the furthest he's got as the lead guy in a team. His turnovers were really bad against the Pacers. Some of his decision making was really bad against the Pacers. And that's why I do think next year we're gonna see the best version of Jalen Brunson because we all know he plays best when he's got a chip on his shoulder. And I think his performance in the finals, in the Eastern Conference Finals, will be plaguing him all summer, and he'll come back as the best version of himself next year.
Yeah. Um, Another guy who is gonna make huge changes, stating his work, Anthony Edwards. Let's talk about the Timberwolves.
Hmm.
Talk about where they go from here. Um, we almost got the coveted Knicks Timberwolves finals, a reunion of two teams that made big trades, two teams that were really kind of laughed at in the offseason. Like, what are you guys doing? This trade doesn't make sense for either side, whatever. And then here they are. They're knocking on the door. I think both these teams, first of all, need to like be pretty happy with how it came out, especially the Timberwolves, a team that, the Knicks definitely had all their knocks for not being as good as they should be. The Timberwolves were basically like kind of left in the dust halfway through the year, just like, okay, this is just an inconsistent team. Julius Randle's not working out. How are they going to trade him? Where do they go from here? Do they just kind of sell off? Like, is Ant gonna want to leave eventually? Like these kind of thoughts creeping in throughout NBA media, and they really turn things around. I think just to start it off with that, I think they got to be happy with this result, even though they're not advancing to the finals here.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say it's a failure. They basically like achieved the same thing after a major trade. So like in a way, obviously, you want to have growth year on year. They got to the Western Conference Finals again. I think they have to see that as a major achievement to get back there after trading away Cat. For let's not forget, this was a move to save them money. As much as they like say, "Oh, we got Randall DiVincenzo," there was a nice package to get backward. They made that move to save money. They did not make that move for pure basketball reasons whatsoever. So to make a move like that, still get back to the Western Conference Finals, still look as good as they looked in those first two series. Yeah, they obviously were outmatched by the Thunder. Randall, after having his greatest playoff run in the first two series, really kind of failed to show up in those conference finals,
Yeah,
and we kind of saw his limitations still. But let's not forget, he's still a 23-year-old guy, and last year after going to the conference finals, he put in the work and really developed his 3 point shot. So I'm really excited to see what he looks to focus on this year, and I think we're going to see him add something else to his game next year to make him an even better player. I think we're going to continue to see growth from him. There's no reason to doubt Anthony Edwards. Yeah, maybe he wasn't there dropping 30 a night and wasn't able to inspire his Timberwolves team to really challenge that OKC team, but he's still only 23 years old. He's still going to keep on getting better, and he will absolutely be back.
yeah. I think that I hope his teammates are doing the same because there's not a lot that I think Ant could have done, and a lot of points in that series where maybe he didn't show up, but guess what? The entire Thunder defense did and was doing everything to make sure he did not score the ball and someone else scored the ball. And on nights where he wasn't scoring, it felt like, that someone else has got to show up here. Um, and this is the interesting part is, okay, so do they choose continuity? Like, this is great. Like they've achieved something that this Timberwolves organization has not had in, ever really, like expecting to make deep playoff runs. Boo-hoo. Like that's no one, what, like five, six teams in the league could say that's their expectation every year. The fact that the Timberwolves are at that point with this young star and everyone else around them, that's a success, right? But looking at continuity as, the next step, thinking about if they're going to re-sign all these guys when money was the question for Cat, they might be in the second apron if they keep Alexander Walker, if they keep Randall, if they have to re-sign for big money for Nas Reed. And the question is always there, like, hey, if we have a guy that we think could be top three, top five player in the league, we want to win a championship, obviously. Is this a championship level team? Maybe by definition, if you're in the Western Conference Finals, yeah. Maybe it depends on the season, always depends on the matchup for sure. There's so much nuance to it than just to simply say that. But um, did we see enough from the team to be like, yeah, let's lock in, let's keep it going. They don't need to change anything. We'll just figure out that matchup next year and or hope we don't face the Thunder next year, even though everything will go through the Thunder for the next 5, 6 years, I think.
Yeah, I mean it's really tough. Like realistically, they can only bring back two of Alexander Walker, Nas Reed, and Randall.
They could keep all three if they
They
go over the
could, but
second apron.
I don't think they will. And I think a lot of teams around the league are kind of all kind of licking their lips, ready to make a push to get Alexander Walker. It wouldn't surprise me if the Wolves went for it and kept all three after what they went through with Cat. Maybe they will say, okay, screw it, let's stop worrying about saving money. Let's just go all in and do what we can, what we think is best to win here. But in my mind, it's probably going to be two or three. And maybe Nas Reed is the one that goes because let's not be crazy. Like he'll get more money if he goes elsewhere. Like he won the Wolves won't be able to pay him the most money that he can get. And if he wants to get paid, he wants to be a starter, he's gonna have to leave Minnesota.
Yeah.
But again, that would be such a huge blow to this Minnesota team because what he brings, the versatility he offers, the energy he brings off the bench has been so crucial for this team. And we all know that this is the era of the role player. And we know for a fact if they lose him, they are not going to get back another player that's at his level.
No, not at all. And it's everyone's going to point to the stats that he had against the Thunder and be you can laugh at his averages. And I think the tough thing about anyone going against the Thunder is like they are going to force your players to play bad. Like they're going to play inefficient, but they can't replace a guy at 6'9", 250, 260 who can post up smaller players, who can put the ball on the floor, who can create his shot from the perimeter. Like this guy is so underrated, and he got his sixth man of the year, so maybe less underrated than he was before. But I think he's going to garner a lot of money, and I think the Timberwolves are going to keep him. I
Mm.
think that they look at this team, they look at this guy who's 25, they look at Nickeil Alexander-Walker who's 26, and they look at guys who could get better. The guys who are going to continue to improve alongside Ant and are going to continue to have continuity alongside him. So I feel like there's gonna be these signings that people will be like, he's worth that much, but maybe he's worth that much because of what he means to this team and what he means to Ant's continued success. Because you want to keep pushing. You don't want to have lost years with Ant.
Yeah, that's the big thing. You don't want to take a year off and say, okay, yeah, we'll get this guy next year. We'll sort out our money. We'll be able to pursue this guy, maybe a free agency or maybe a trade. Like when you never know when the bubble's going to burst. So you got to keep on going for your back-to-back Western Conference Finals. Next year is the year where you want to see them really challenge and don't want to get too far ahead, touching wood. You think it's going to be the Thunder they have to take down again, but we'll see. We haven't seen it really a team that to go back to back years yet, but we obviously believe the Thunder are going to be that. But there's a lot of pressure on the Timberwolves to obviously just pay up to pay up, and the only other kind of switch they have is how confident can they be in any of their younger guys being legitimate role players next year?
I was gonna say that. So like I wanted to ask the same question. Like in this playoffs, did we see anything that changed your mind on some guys and then made you form change your opinion or maybe form a stronger opinion on them?
I mean, yeah, obviously, like we saw the impact that he had coming off the bench, and like obviously he only played like flaring minutes, but whenever he came in, it was like he was scoring points, and it wasn't Rob Dillingham that was doing that. Maybe that's a worry. Maybe it's like it's too much to expect Rob Dillingham after a difficult first year to really come in and be like your point guard off the bench next year. But they have the other guy that looks like maybe he's ready to do it.
I think we're both talking about Terrence Shannon Jr., right?
Of course.
Yeah, yeah. Like, dude, like so when he and Jalen Clark were getting some run during their injuries when Randall was out, like they popped as soon as they both of those guys popped on the floor. Like Clark did not get a ton of run in the playoffs, but I saw the flash in the regular season. I think those two guys are, and maybe I go a little too crazy about some of these role players, but we see with the Pacers, like use these teams that are in the finals as archetypes. They have depth. They have guys that plug and play. They have, that system, and they're growing that. We saw from the Grizzlies when they were being successful. They constantly had guys rotating in. They always had next man up mentality. They always had that energy. That's how they were able to be such a consistent regular season team. And the Timberwolves, that I think that's the biggest part of having long-term success in this league with a star talent like Anthony Edwards is developing those young guys alongside him so that you don't have to keep stressing about like look at where the Bucks are right now. They have nothing. They have no development of young talent. They have nowhere to go. There's just Giannis, and I hope this guy we signed last year for the mid-level does something this year. Like that doesn't work. And guys like Terrence Jr., guys like Jalen Clark, you hope that they continue to grow because, I mean, Terrence Shannon Jr. is a bucket. Like, he did not fold under the pressure of the playoffs. He came in, he knew who he was, he knew the moves he wanted to get to, he knew his physicality on defense, and he did all of that. And like the scant minutes you saw from Jalen Clark, he did the same thing, and you saw in the regular season from him too. I think those two guys can be, rotation pieces and keep pushing the starters to play the way they play because hey, like I loved seeing the regular season where you might get, and there's some times in the second half where you get a lazy possession from Randall. All right, quick out, bring in some energy. It's like, hey, that's what we need, and you need guys like that. And Rob Dillingham, I think he's just too small right now.
Mhm.
He's too small. He's not ready. Like it's almost like I feel like a quarterback rookie year. Watch Conley play. Watch how does Conley deal with being small out there. Can you replicate that? Because a lot of his game is creating his shot is a lot of offense, and I think that the playoffs are just too big for him. Like that would have been a lot to put a young guy like him through and not kill his confidence early on. So I think it's fair that he didn't get any run, but a lot of eyes on him. This is another year of Conley getting older.
Mhm.
Is Dillingham going to develop over the summer? Is he going to work on his body? Is he gonna work on his defensive technique to make up for his size? I mean, who better to teach him than Mike Conley? So we'll see what he looks like next season. But I think that continuity does mean a lot for this team, given what we saw from some of the young guys, given the good things we saw out of Randall. Like this is, I think it's unfair to look at him facing the absolute gauntlet, the buzzsaw, the mismatch that is the Thunder for a guy like him and be like, yeah, that's who he is. I think it depends on the matchups. Everything depends on these matchups. And I think Randall did fantastic throughout this playoffs, and the Thunder were a unique and difficult challenge for him that I think he deserves another opportunity to figure out next season.
Final word on the Wolves. Should they revisit the Kevin Durant trade?
No, no.
I think I agree with you.
No, I think that's I have very little basketball thoughts on it and just vibes. Like I've had enough of the Durant trades. They never end. They never end well, ever. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. All right, let's finish that. Let's get on to the big boy, the NBA Finals. The Oklahoma City Thunder against the Indiana Pacers, the two best teams in the NBA since January 1st. Indiana Pacers record 47 and 19, Thunder record 53 and 13. These two teams are coming into this matchup red hot. And as much as everyone's like, oh, mid-market, this is bad for ratings, who cares about ratings? These are both two teams that play great brands of basketball, and we should have some really exciting games.
Yeah, this is going to be a very unique finals. We've seen, obviously, I think that when we saw the Warriors and their style of play, it part of it feels a little reminiscent. The way the Warriors play, the fast pace that they play, the ball movement that they have, the system that they have, you could see a lot of similarities to the Pacers in the way they move the ball, the way they're creating so many shots, and obviously in different ways, a lot more egalitarian. They don't have that meteoric shooter like Curry, but the way that the fast paced play that they have is a lot different than your Celtics and Mavs type of matchup. A lot different than your Nuggets in the finals. A lot different than watching the Heat. Like this is going to be a young, and I haven't looked at this, but this has to be the youngest, if one of the youngest finals matchups that we've ever seen in the finals.
Yeah, it's got to be up there. Obviously, I think the Pacers are the youngest team since the 77 Trailblazers.
The Thunder are,
Yeah,
and
the
I
Thunder
think
are,
that
and the
and the
Pacers, they're not that much older. I mean, I have to assume that the Pacers, in terms of a combo of two teams, I feel like it could be up there. The fact that I haven't seen it is the only reason that's making me think
yeah.
that it's not there.
The Pacers average age is 26.6, and the Thunder average age. Is there one old guy on the Pacers that we're forgetting about?
Yeah, Siakam.
Oh, there is. There is. They got Bloodsport. They got Bloodsport on there.
Yeah, well, they got Joe
So
Johnson, or not Joe
he's
Johnson. Which Johnson do they have?
he
It
he's
is
he's
Joe, right?
he's pushing 30. So that's got to be pulling them up. And
Yeah.
Oklahoma City, their average player age is 24.7. So this is they're the second youngest team in the NBA Finals the last 7 years compared to the Blazers. But this is going to be the most fast paced that I think we've ever seen in this generation. The only other Eastern Conference teams, you can't point to another fast one. Like you've seen Celtics, you've seen Heat, you've seen all the LeBron teams essentially, and they've never played at this breakneck speed. So be prepared. Like you can't keep your eyes off the TV. If you take a bathroom break, you might miss like 10 buckets. If you go grab a beer, you'll miss three. Like this is going to be a very fun finals. Um, let's start with, what is the weak point? Like what is going to be the weak point that the Thunder go after for the Pacers? I think I asked what the weak point would be to the Thunder, and I really struggle to think of any and find any weak points because they can adapt to pretty much anything. But what do you think that the Thunder are going to be pushing at first? What's their priority number one offensively to poke at this Pacers defense?
I mean, it's so tough. You kind of feel like they're going to play like a similar way. They're going to look to to do what they do. They're going to look to get turnovers and play fast. They're going to try and attack the paint. They're going to try and be going up against the unset defenses. They're going to just do the Thunder are just going to do their thing. Like I don't see them doing anything differently. I feel like they know who they are, and it's on the team that they're playing to make them uncomfortable and do things that they don't want to do. They're going to play the exact same way they have all season and throughout the playoffs, and it's going to be on the Pacers to try and limit that and try to slow that down. I'm looking at the Thunder and I'm saying I don't see them giving up the open lanes and the open looks, especially off of made baskets like the Knicks did in those conference finals. And then defensively also, I think they're gonna have so many bodies around Halliburton all the time, whereas the Knicks only did that in one game throughout that series, and that's where we're gonna see what this Pacers team is made of and what they can do when Halliburton is not able to drop 10, 12 assists without turning the ball over. Like Halliburton's as good as it comes. He's like maybe he's the next version of the point guard, but the all the bodies that they're going to be able to throw at him and like the constant pressure that's going to be on the ball, it could be we could consistently see him underperform like he did in that game 5 against the Knicks.
Yeah. I think that one fair point about poking at the Pacers will be, looking at the Knicks series. How often did they actually try to attack Halliburton? I think that's a point pretty much game in, game out. Like, hey, like how you just tried to go at Halliburton and they were able to just like scramble and switch back. They're able to avoid those mismatches against Brunson. And they didn't get a whole lot of that. And I think that
No.
finding a way to, whether that's getting like empty side sets, and I don't think that OKC gets to that. And I don't think OKC necessarily wants to bog themselves down into that. But Halliburton felt a little too comfortable for a guy who, he's been so much better defensively in these playoffs. I think like he's defended his butt off compared to what we've seen in the regular season. But I mean, you want to use Shea to get him uncomfortable, get him in foul trouble. I think that constantly having Shea guarded by their best defenders, their Nemhards, I don't think he's going to be too worried about it. But getting Halliburton uncomfortable and getting to the free throw line, that's going to be the death of the Pacers' pace. And I think there's one difference between these two teams because OKC can play with pace; they can run up and down the court. They can create turnovers. They can run in transition. These are two best transition teams in the league. But they can also slow it down.
Yeah.
Shea can slow it down. He can find his mismatch. He can get methodical. And for some reason, this team just has the juice. They don't get bogged down by that. They can still play active defensively. They're still going to get out into the open floor. But we've seen, there are a few times here and there where the Knicks were able to do their thing. They were able to play methodical. They were able to attack the boards, and then the pace was slowed down, and they didn't quite have that same pace. And Carlisle's like, "Hey, we got to keep running." But OKC doesn't quite get as bogged down as that. So I wonder if that could be a point of attack. Can they find ways to get that mismatch and get faster to that matchup? Whether that's Jalen Williams attacking, whether that is Shea attacking. I think that they have multiple options to get to that. But I think that's where they might start.
I mean, that's the key thing. You force the Pacers to play in the half court, and that gives you a great chance to win. They do not have a great half court offense. Their whole mantra, the great thing about this team is playing fast, scoring quick, whether that be off turnovers or even in live possessions against after made buckets. Like we saw how often Siakam was streaking down the court after a made bucket by the Knicks, and how many looks they got off that. And let's not forget the Thunder aren't going to let Thomas Bryant go 100% from the corners on threes against them. That ain't going to
Yeah.
happen again. And that's the thing. I look at this and like don't get me wrong. I think unequivocally the Thunder would have swept the Knicks without a doubt. I think they could do it to the Pacers as well, but it's just going to be so tough for the Pacers to overcome them because I just think that everything that the Pacers do well, the Thunder can limit and also do it as well. I just think the
Yeah.
Thunder are like a better version of the Pacers, a better defensive version for sure, and can absolutely match them pace wise, turnover wise, on the offensive end.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm really as I'm thinking about these matchups, as I'm thinking about how they're going to defend Shea, I think that the Pacers are going to have a tough task. I mean, they're constantly up for it, and the Pacers are always making up for it with energy, with making great rotations, and always being quick to the ball. But you know, your Isaiah Hartenstein, he's going to be a problem. Like you want to blitz those pick and rolls. Isaiah Hartenstein's a great playmaker in the middle of the floor. Same with Chet. Both those guys, fantastic playmakers there. And we know those cutters from the corners are going to be killing them. So whichever way you put it, like that, the point of attack defense is going to be so essential for Shea. And protecting Halliburton is going to be like the number one priority because if they get to those mismatches, if you're getting Miles Turner in the drop and you're giving up easy mid-rangers to Shea, then everything's going to tumble from there. So that's gonna be the interesting point where do the Pacers start to set up the defense? Do they go to zone? Do they just try to get OKC to shoot? Because I think we're going to see a lot of zone from Pacers because we've seen at times, against the Nuggets, where they struggled against zone and they figured it out. And it seems like as soon as the Timberwolves tried to get to it, they already knew where to attack the middle, kick out, shoot. And they've kind of already had to solve that puzzle. So I mean, at times we just saw them facing man defense the entire games against the Timberwolves, where there's so much easy buckets because it just felt like regular season games. But I think the Pacers they're going to bring that back. So are we going to see the Thunder be comfortable again, breaking down a zone? Um, and a lot of that I think too is going to come down to Jalen Williams. Is he going to have another statement series? He's really ramped things up. He's gotten more comfortable, and especially getting mid-range shots. Felt like he had a little less resistance in this last series, but I'm interested to see how he responds.
Yeah, for sure. And like you mentioned, like to make the Thunder shoot. That's been like I know it hasn't obviously hasn't affected them because they're still so they can still be so impactful offensively even without it. But like the 3-point shot's been a weakness for them throughout these playoffs. They've struggled majorly at times shooting from deep. So that's one area where I'm not saying it will change things for the Pacers, but they have to be looking at it and saying we absolutely need to dominate the 3-point battle. We need to continue. We need to hope that their struggles continue. We need to make sure that we stay red hot because that's really the main area where I see them possibly gaining some sort of significant advantage. Do I think it's going to be enough? Probably not with the way that the Thunder can still dominate, getting to the free throw line, mid ranges from Shea, transition buckets, things like that. But that's one area where I think that the Thunder can gain an advantage and will absolutely need it if they're going to cause any sort of noise in this series. In terms of like matchup wise, like how we saw how uncomfortable like Nemhard and Neesmith were able to make Jalen Brunson. Can they get any level close to doing that to Shea Gilgeous-Alexander?
Well,
I'm
it's
I'm not
tough to
so sure.
say. It's tough to
Yeah.
say because both are very similar guys in terms of drawing fouls. And you had your fair share of times where, Brunson is falling on the floor and nearly breaking his neck at the slightest chest bump. But I mean, it's a whole different battle. There's different nuances to how both these guys draw fouls, and um, I think comparing their performances, I think you could feel pretty good that they're gonna stand steady against Shea and not get into too much foul trouble. Um, and I think that you need to have those two guys be physical with Shea and not catch fouls if they can really get up into the chest. And I'm curious to see where the whistle's gonna matter too. Like
Yeah.
it's the finals, and it depends series to series. Sometimes it sucks to say, but it depends on whose whistle you got, and are they gonna continue to give Shea some of these fouls? I don't know, and I hate bringing up that subject. It's been one that's talked about a lot, and I think that it's fair to see his skill in drawing fouls, but there's got to be a limit to it. There's got to be a limit to it.
There'll be
Um,
moments. There'll be moments where there's limits to it, and then there'll be moments where he's getting literally everything he possibly ever want. Like that's the way the whole playoffs have gone. There's just that inconsistency is still so there, it's still so prevalent with the with the officiating. The other matchup I want to discuss real quick is Chet Holmgren on Siakam. I think that's going to be an interesting matchup. If that's the way they go, obviously the Thunder could go any which way on Siakam, but that's one player the Knicks had zero answer for uh,
yeah,
offensively. Siakam could be he is the X factor for the Thunder if they're going or for the Pacers for sure.
yeah. I don't think the Thunder are going to care as much. I think all their guys are so versatile. I don't think they care if Caruso is on him. I
Mm.
don't think they care if Jalen Williams is on him. I don't think they care. I think they're happy if Chet is on him. Siakam's not doing anything to Chet in the paint, in the mid range, off the dribble. Maybe that's something. But even off the dribble, I mean, Siakam straight line drives like that's Chet's sending that to the second row every time.
Yeah.
He does not struggle with that. His hips are too fast for that. I think that maybe mismatches on Hartenstein if they're getting Hartenstein on the perimeter with Siakam, maybe that starts to become a problem. It depends on how much they intend to switch, and I think that um, it's going to depend on the situation. But yeah, I think more so for Siakam, like how is Siakam going to respond? Is he going to have the same shooting? Like he was not a liability from the perimeter. He went 3 for 5 one game, 3 for 4 the other game, and it was just those opportunities. Like there were moments where the Knicks laid off of him. They're like, all right, let's see if you shoot, and he took it. There was no hesitation. It wasn't even the volume. It was just purely his approach to the game. And anytime he was given an open look, he was confidently shooting that ball. And that is huge. You don't want to be in a situation where he becomes afraid to shoot, a little reluctant, and then they're like, "Oh, we'll put Shed on him. Let's pack the paint." You cannot let OKC pack the paint. That's gonna be, I think, the biggest challenge is if Siakam is afraid to shoot, if Miles Turner becomes afraid to shoot, that will spell death because we know what happens when OKC can pack the paint, and we know what the process the Pacers need to get to. They need to attack the paint. They need to get to their angles. They need to drive and kick. If they cannot drive, they cannot kick, and their offense is going to come to a halt. So I think Siakam is up for it. Seeing his process, seeing his confidence right now is really coming to a height, and that for a guy that has been a leader on a championship team, I think he'll be ready.
Agreed.
Yeah, so he's a big X factor. Who's your X factor for the Pacers? I was thinking about him. I think we mentioned him, Neesmith.
Yeah.
The moments we saw from him, his defense. I think he's mine.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the way he fights over screens, the way he never seems to, whenever he's like guarding one on one, like he always seems to, he never seems there's no way of getting him off away from your guy. Like his defense is so crucial. Like what he can, how he can make Shea uncomfortable, and obviously probably Jalen Williams as well. There's probably going to be moments where he's guarding him as well. And if his shooting can hold up again as well, like that's such a huge difference maker. His shooting has been incredible in these throughout these playoffs, and if he can have moments like he did against the Knicks, obviously the defense was the big part, but when he's hitting his shots as well, that makes him one of the best role players in the entire NBA.
Yeah, hitting those corner threes, like him and Siakam hitting corner threes. That both of them collectively, that's gonna be such a big X factor for. We saw that's something that OKC liked to get to against when they were working against the Timberwolves, which is a different animal. I don't think they're going to help off the corners as much as they did there. Um, the Pacers don't exactly have that guy, but does Halliburton turn into that? Does Halliburton really start turning corners if OKC wants to be aggressive, playing up to the screen? So you can start turning corners, getting to the paint, kicking out, because those corner threes can be there depending on how OKC wants to play, especially when they get in their zone. Um, so I really look to Neesmith. Is he going to have a big game? Is he going to keep elevating his game? And again, thinking about like how my perception changed a little bit. I've always been high on Neesmith, and I'm thinking of getting even higher. I'm like, dude, does he have another level? Is he reaching another level? Like we've seen guys level up in the playoffs, and the kind of performances he's had is like, he becomes a different player when that shot volume is there with the consistency. Because his defense, like you said, he's such a tireless defender. Like he never slows down. He's always just as physical. He's always getting over those screens. And same can be said for Nemhard. But yeah, I'm excited to see how that pans out for him in this series.
Yeah, one thing I gotta say though, that we have seen in every single series so far, the Pacers have had an absolutely absurd, insane comeback that should never, ever, ever have happened. They've done it in every single series. Are we going to
Mm-hmm.
see it again?
Mm-hmm. I got another stat I wanted to bring up. The this one blows my mind. There are times where you feel like the Pacers are like just hitting everything. Like they are not missing. Everyone on the floor is hitting the shot. They have the most efficient offense in the playoffs. That seems pretty obvious, right? Their true shooting percentage, 61.7%, is better than the Cavs' regular season true shooting percent. In the playoffs, the Pacers with their frenetic play, this is something like you see that percentage, you're like, okay, they have like traditionally you'd think about, a few guys are super efficient, they're getting their points, and that they're getting efficient shots. This is the whole like the way that they play, you'd never think they'd be an efficient team. And it's just insane. They're first in mid-range and they're first in three-point percentage. So just compare that to OKC, who's been giving up the third highest three-point rate and the second highest from the corners. They love giving it mid-rangers. Like, curious to see how that's going to pan out for them. Obviously, different beast than defending guys like the Timberwolves, but that should be interesting to see. Um, and I also wanted to bring up like the perception we have in general about the playoffs. You've talked about how it's like the era of the role player. It's all about depth now. It's a little bit less about the stars. And I think that the Pacers are kind of taking that to another level in terms of how they play too. I think we've typically seen it over the last decade. You look at fast teams, I don't know, you think about your Kings, you have this super fast pace. You're like, that's a regular season thing. You're not going to do that in the playoffs. You don't have enough star power. And they've turned that on its head. And a guy like Halliburton, his unique skill of being a super fast player, but a super fast processor and a perfect passer. I don't think there's any point guard in history who's been such a fast breakneck player, making quick decisions and not turning the ball over. Like it feels like they're kind of reinventing pathways to contention in more ways than one, and how their lead player looks and how the depth of their team looks and how they play. It's really fascinating.
And I totally agree with you on everything you just said, but I also think that Thunder win this in 5 games.
Just straight to the point. 5 games. So it's just the one well, the one game that they shouldn't win that they do.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's that. I think the Thunder just have too much. I think with the Pacers, for me, I'm hating on them right now. I love because I love Siakam. I love Tyrese Halliburton. I think he is such a good player. I love the way that they play basketball. But I think that I still believe that the best quality of their team is their coach. And even though they're going to be around for a while, I still just think there's always going to be one team better than them, whether that be some one team in the Eastern Conference or the team they face in the finals. There's always going to be that one team that's better than them, and I think the Thunder are that.
Yeah. I I think this goes to 6.
I
I
hope
think
so.
this goes
I
to
want it to be a long
6.
series.
And I think that the Pacers will pose a challenge for the Thunder, not because of their offense. I think that the offenses are going to match, but I think the Pacers defense will force them to be a shooting team. And I think we're gonna see a couple games, like I said, when Pacers get to zone and they force them to shoot, like the Nuggets. We seen a couple times where the Thunder can, if Jalen Williams isn't having a solid game, if he's having a tough time, I don't think they're gonna give him easy shots. They've seen the tape. They've seen him getting confident. They're not gonna let Jalen Williams get confident. I think that their defense is gonna to force these other guys to make shots, and I think they'll get a couple games out of it. And I think it's a series, man. I can't doubt the Pacers because of their it factor, man. Like it doesn't matter if it's a 10-point game in the fourth quarter, anything can happen the way they play. Anything can happen throughout the court. It was kind of what we said with the last year's, right? Either it was going to be OKC was going to blow out um, the Nuggets, or they were going to blow out the T-Wolves, or it's going to be a close game and maybe the experience wins out, or maybe the one-on-one wins out. I think the Pacers, if it's 10 points, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
So
that's
unless
the
they're
other
getting
thing.
blown out.
It's tough because obviously it's the new experience basically for everyone going into this outside of
Hmm.
Caruso and Siakam.
Yeah.
So I mean, at least Carlisle's been there before as a coach.
Oh yeah.
Let's see what sort of impact that can have. I mean, the first time going to the finals, it can be daunting for some guys. Maybe it could have an impact on the likes of Shea and Jalen Williams and other guys like that, and maybe that opens the door a little bit for the Pacers. I just think the Thunder are just by far the best team going into this, so that's why I'm leaning towards 5 games. But I hope you're right, and I hope this turns out to be a series because I think it could be, even if it's a 5 game series, I think there could be really exciting close games because both these teams are gonna go for it all. Both these teams are gonna be have moments where they're just red hot, and I think that's gonna make for some really exciting basketball.
It's going to be so much fun, man. And this Thunder team, I agree with you. They feel dominant. They feel inevitable. But this Pacers team, they feel just so unpredictable. And you doubt them 100 times and they prove you wrong 100 times. There's 101st time. Are you going to doubt them again? I don't know. So I can't wait to see how this ends up, man. At a minimum, every game is going to be so good. I think that it's going to be must-watch basketball night in, night out, regardless of all the free throw merchant chance. I think it's going to go much beyond that. This is going to be one of the best finals we've had in a while.
Yeah, yeah, and I hope it turns out that way. It all kicks off tomorrow, Thursday, on ESPN and ABC. But we'll have you covered as things go on. It's going to be really exciting. Make sure you tune in. Don't worry about whether it's the two small market teams, the star power is not there. This is going to be some really good basketball. So make sure you tune in. Where do the Knicks go next? Do they have their next great coach on the back burner, or will they make mistakes and the grass won't be so much greener? Who knows? Will the Timberwolves be back? Do they bring back Nas Reed and Nah and Randall? We're gonna have to wait and see. But for now, that's gonna do it. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you all so much for sticking with us. Remember, if you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you're on Spotify, make sure you leave that 5-star review. You do that, we'll keep producing that content.